All right, here we go. Salute to NBA Nation on this Friday evening. Another Knicks Fan TV NBA Report and Bleacher Report simulcast. We are breaking down the 2025 free agency, NBA free agency, which is slated to kick off on July 1st, which is this coming Tuesday. And joining me today, he knows the NBA free agent world inside and out. You can catch some of his writing pieces on Spotrac, where he breaks down the NBA salary cap, team cap sheets, things of that nature. He's a demon on Twitter, breaking down all transactions. You can also catch him on YouTube with our guy Trevor Lane and the NBA front office show as well, man. So he's all over the map, breaking things down for us. Our guy Keith Smith is back in the building with us. So if you have any questions for Keith as it relates to NBA free agency, Knicks offseason, whatever it is, you can call us up on the Knicks Fan TV Discord or the NBA Report Discord as well, man. So let's get right into it. Keith, how we doing, man? Happy Friday, man.
Yeah, happy Friday. It's fun drafts in the rear view. We got free agency in a couple days. It's nice to have a couple days to reset in between, but yeah, I'm excited. Everything's good.
Yeah, for sure, man. And so, we're entering into the second off season in the apron era, as I call it.
Yep.
For someone like you who has studied the CBA and the salary cap implications, we've seen your team, the Celtics, sell the team with Grossbeck speaking of the perils of the second apron, and boom, as soon as the offseason starts, Brad Stevens, they're deloading assets, moving Drew Holiday, moving Kristaps Porzingis. Just overall, what's been your impressions of the apron and its impact on teams as we now head into the second year?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is kind of a good time to assess, because if we do it a year in, we're going to make all these snap judgments and things like that. But I think a couple years into this now, this is working the way they wanted it to. They wanted to curb teams from being wildly expensive. I don't mean to call out Steve Ballmer in any kind of negative way, but they did not want Steve Ballmer, all these other now super duper rich owners that are buying teams and ownership groups, from just adding more money and more money because they make that in the time it took me to say that sentence, right? That's what they did not want. They did not want teams to just add. So that's why they added actual basketball roster restrictions to these teams, because they had tried. They made the repeater tax. They made the tax more punitive. They kept creating financial penalties that these teams are like, cool, here's just a bigger check. And they just didn't really care. So by putting these basketball restrictions in, you've caused these teams to really think, all right, if we're not a title contender, outside of the Phoenix Suns, we could talk about them later, maybe. But if we're not a title contender, where are we going, right? Like it probably is time. And I think for the Celtics, we all knew this was coming, right? We knew it was coming. It just came maybe a year earlier than anybody hoped, because the Knicks beat them in the second round. And I'll be completely upfront and honest, the Knicks were going to win that series anyway. They were well on their way. But then when Jason Tatum went down, that gave the Celtics, it's not the perfect word to use for this, but it gave them the cover to be able to start this process, because they're not title contenders without Jason Tatum. They can still be good, can still be a playoff team. I think they will be, which says a lot more about how bad the East is. But they start the process now of resetting and retooling the roster, so when Tatum is back, they can start building back up and get back towards being one of those more expensive teams.
Yeah, for sure. And earlier this week, we heard Josh Kroenke speak on it and how careful the Nuggets are being with the way that they operate their cap sheet this offseason. And, it's so interesting, because it's like we're looking at the finals and we look at how impressive the pathway for both of these teams. You look at the Thunder, and yes, SGA is SGA, but you had two starters turn into, for Jalen Williams, an all-star, for Chet, a really good player, both under rookie deals. The Pacers, 1 through 12, 11, I mean, super deep. And, we look at that in this apron era, it's so impressive. And then I'm looking at it with my team, like the Knicks, and I'm like, damn, we got no room for error here. This is a margin build with this core right now to try to get this thing done.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it really, I think, should have started to come home for Knicks fans with being a first apron team a year ago, with the literal gymnastics they needed to pull off
Yes.
to just even have enough guys to have a legal roster, right? It was, all right, we're bringing in a guy for 14 days and then see you later for a few days. And then we'll bring a guy back in and all right, we're going to convert Ariel Huckporty because then he counted his actual salary versus the 2-year minimum towards the apron calculation and all these things that they had to work around because they were hard capped at the first apron. Well, with the second apron, it's even more restrictive. You can't do any of the first apron stuff. And then if you there's even less you can do if you put yourself over that second apron. You're really limited to making trades like Boston did, where you send out one guy and you take less money back in the trade. You can acquire multiple guys, but you have to take less money back. You could sign your own draft picks. You could sign your own free agents because that's the one thing that I think is getting a little lost in this. At no point did the NBA put it that, hey, if you draft, like the Thunder, for example, if we're 2-3 years from now, you can keep every single guy you draft. That's it. You're not adding other guys to them.
Right.
That they never said you have to break those guys up, but it's just tough. Like you said, it's the Pacers are a great example. In the Thunder too. I think if you're a contender and you're planning on playing into June, you have to plan for a 100-game season now, which means you can't have 6 good players. You have to have 10, 11, 12 guys you trust. You got to have guys who can get you through the, no offense meant, but the Tuesday nights in Charlotte, right, in January. You got to have the guys who can get you through those nights so that you're good and ready to go in April, May, and June, because that's when it really matters. You got to have your guys ready to go. You may cut down your rotation when you get there. You're not going to play 10, 11, 12 guys probably, but you need those guys to get you through the earlier months so those guys are ready when you get to the end. And that's where I think team building is going to take on a little bit of a different bend now, because the days of let's load up 3 stars and a whole bunch of dudes on minimums, I just don't think it's going to work because you're not going to have the depth to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, going to be very, very difficult to do so. And from a Knicks perspective, I think that is part of the reason why Tom Thibodeau, while many around the league were surprised, man, first Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years, I just feel like the old way of doing things, especially with this second apron, a guy like him who is going to be over-reliant on his starters, yes, he wants to get them ready and build that chemistry, all of that. I don't think you can do that going forward. Like, you legitimately have to get, numbers 8 through 13, some sort of looks to be ready because you just never know.
And if you're going to play your starters a lot in the games they play, you have to be a lot more willing to say, you got to take a game off here. You got to take a game off there. And I know a lot of the Knicks players, it's a lot like a lot of the Celtics guys, where it's like, you want me to take a game off, you better take my sneakers away from me and hide my jersey, because I don't want it. Like Mikal Bridges, good luck ever getting that guy to take a game off, right? I think for a lot of these guys, it's, no, I want to play. But if you're going to play him heavy minutes, you got to spot him rest in other ways. And then you got to eliminate, there's no reason to be playing guys 40 minutes a night when you're up by 35 with 5 minutes left. Get them off the floor. Like, you did the panic that, and it's a thing with Tibbs, obviously, but all coaches are a little more panicky. When they're down, it's so funny. They're a lot more willing to, when they're down, to be like, all right, game's over. Yeah, get out of there. But when they're up, it's like, and I think it's because if I blow this, I'm never going to hear the end of it. So it becomes a little bit of a, I think they all pull guys a little too late. But if you're also playing the guys who are, like you said, 8 through 13 on the roster, it's less likely you're going to blow that game because they're a little bit more developed, a little bit more willing to play. But yeah, you got to get through a 100-game season now if you're going to try to compete for a title.
Yeah, when it comes to the Knicks and starting with their own free agents or upcoming free agents, Mikal Bridges is number one target right now. He's eligible for a 4-year, $156 million contract extension. Where do you think the Knicks go there with Mikal Bridges and, again, with all these apron implications?
Yeah, when I wrote up their off-season preview for Spotrac, he was one of the players I focused on. I didn't focus too much on trades and all. Trades are very hard to predict, and I like playing trade games as much as everybody else does, but I try not to do that when I'm breaking down an off-season preview. And quite frankly, their own free agents they're just they're more likely to be minimum type guys that return back to the Knicks, or that's what they'll be elsewhere. So it was a lot more about the extensions. So with Bridges, I think when Jalen Brunson took less money, I think that kind of set the tone for,
Yeah.
hey, some other guys are going to follow suit. We're going to try to do what we can to avoid maxing this out and not being able to add help down the line. And their other contracts are in pretty good shape for the most part. So I think for Bridges, there's an understanding of, hey, we can't give you max money or anything like that. And I don't think he's necessarily going to push for it. So what I threw out there was maybe you do a 3-year deal, which aligns him with Brunson and with Anunoby, a 3-year extension that is. Then those guys are now all on the same exact timeline. And what you can really say is, all right, we're going to be dancing around these aprons for the run with these guys and with Towns and with Hart, but we've got a good solid group and we can make a good 3-year run at this. And then if it's not working, then we'll readdress in a few years and we can start to figure out other options. And that's what I think we're likely to see the Knicks do, is something like that. And I said 3 years, 111 million. It's about 37 million a year. Feels pretty fair for me for what Mikal Bridges is. And I think that's a direction that I would look to, something in that range. It might come in 4 years. Maybe they go to that 4 years. I don't know that they'll go full what he could get, but maybe slightly under that. But I do think it'll come in somewhere around that range.
Yeah, because for me, I hope he does take less. I think it only makes sense. And like you said, it seems like Brunson did kind of set that tone as the captain, as the leader of the team, and just understanding that, hey, listen, we're facing a lot of restrictions here. If we really want to do something special here in New York, we all have to make that sacrifice. And so I hope Mikal Bridges does. But, from a talent and trade standpoint, like you said, it's hard to predict trades, especially in under these circumstances. But from a talent standpoint, unless it's just an aggregate trade where you're using Mikal Bridges in some sort of blockbuster, which I just don't see too many out there, I think it would behoove the Knicks and Mikal Bridges come to the table on a smaller deal. Hope that the next coach can maximize that talent and the chemistry between Bridges, Towns, and Brunson, because I think there is more there to unlock with Mikal Bridges. He certainly showed some more pop in his defense and at times offensively in the playoffs. Pacers series, he kind of struggled, but I just think that's the best course. I don't see a trade where it makes sense for the Knicks, even if they're getting depth pieces back. They still need another guy with some punch.
100%. And then there's also, right, to some extent, I want to say I don't care about optics, because whatever you did's done. We can't go back and undo it.
Yeah.
The reality is optics do matter. They gave up everything to get Mikal Bridges. You go now and trade him for, we turned him into two nice depth pieces. People are going to be like, we needed to trade 5 first-round picks to turn him into 2 depth pieces a year later? Like, what are we doing? That doesn't make sense to me, because I think I just said you can't, I don't think you're going to be able to build the 3-star roster. You have to have depth of talent around, but there's something to said to still have high-end players.
Right.
And I think Bridges' place in the Knicks pecking order, especially on the offensive end, is right where it should be. I think in Brooklyn, he put up big numbers, but you saw his efficiency dropped a little bit. I just don't think he's a number 1 or number 2 offensive option. When he's number 3, you're probably pretty good. And guess what? The other 2 guys who are number 1 and 2 are really, really good offensive options. So if he's number 3, you're going to be a good team offensively. And then you mentioned the defense. I felt like this was the first year. The Nets years will get a little wonky, especially that last one, because they were a little bit of a weird team. Whereas, all right, they're going to rebuild. It's not exactly the same Nets group. But I thought this last year, especially in the second half of the season in the playoffs, started looking a lot more like the defensive player the Phoenix Suns had.
Yeah.
Whereas, okay, he's still got that ability to lock up. Some of the things he did to some of the Celtics guys in those games, especially late in games, was this is the guy that we all loved a few years ago when he was kind of coming to prominence with the Suns. And that's what, he's I like to live by the motto, there's very few actual untouchable players in the NBA. But he's not on the table for me. You're going to have to call me and blow me away before I'm thinking about moving Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. And so with that figure, that estimate that you made, the 3 years, 111, you said? 111?
Yeah, that's what I think. 111 feels like a fair compromise. It again lines his contract nicely with Brunson and Anunoby, and then it gets him back on the market in a few years, and then he's not. It's not, you're not locking in longer term than maybe you need to.
Now, based on that, have you looked at whether or not that would put them in second apron area, or would they still be within that first apron kind of safety net, if you will?
Yeah, it's a good question. Here's a little bit of the good news, I guess, is the cap's going to go up again next offseason, probably up again by 10%. So yeah, that's going to jump them up and I'm just going to do some quick math here while we're talking. So, let me go on the fly.
Man. Salute to everybody in the chat, breaking it down here. Keith Smith, 2025 free agency. Let's go. Here we go.
They would be, if you if you had them on the books starting in the 26-27 season for $37 million, they're about in the same place that they are now, where you're dancing around that apron line, right? You've got to, let's see what happens with Mitchell Robinson. If you I think I pitched $16 million for him. You put him on the books. Yeah, now you're barely up over the second apron. So that's where it's going to become, all right, maybe we got to do a little bit of maneuvering here. Maybe you get one of the guys to take a little less, or you don't do any kind of flat or front loading of the contracts. You let them gradually build up, because the most a contract can go up year over year is 8%, and the caps, at least for another couple years, should grow 10%. So you're kind of, hopefully the cap growth outpaces it, but you're going to be dancing around that second apron kind of like they are this year, if you re-sign your guys. But if you're a title contender, which I believe they are, that's kind of the world you're going to end up living in anyway.
Yeah, well said. Now, when you mentioned Mitchell Robinson, Daniel Gafford did get his new deal, and that was it 360? I'm just looking up the numbers again.
Less than that.
A little less.
Slightly less, I think.
Okay. What did you think that the Gafford deal may have in terms of impacting Mitchell Robinson's market?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the way one player at the same position signing a contract, impacting another player at the same positions, 360. You were spot on it. I'm thinking it's the way it's going to be structured. Like,
okay.
With that, but yes. So the point I was going to make is, I think that's gone away a little bit. I don't think it's as much as like what it used to be. Like, I don't think Mitchell Robinson can walk into the front office and say, Daniel Gafford got 3 for 60. You have to give that to me. Because I think what the Knicks front office is going to fire back with, because it's a bunch of smart guys in there, are going to say, hey, that's not the same situation. Like, it's just not. Like, we have to be conscious of X, Y, and Z. All of that said, I think that sets the high end benchmark for where you would go with Robinson, only because Daniel Gafford's been moderately healthy throughout the run of his career. Mitchell Robinson has missed an awful lot of time. So I think you got to protect against that. And there is still a world where in Dallas, Daniel Gafford plays himself back into being the starting five, because let's see with Derek Lively. We all like Derek Lively, but year two was kind of a mess for Derek Lively. Daniel Gafford was the better player of the two in year two. So I think with Mitchell Robinson, if Karl-Anthony Towns is there, unless they do the dual big starting group, which who knows, we'll see whoever they hire as a new coach and how they feel about constructing the lineups. You have to be very cautious of where are we going, even though he's a very important player. There's still a limit to what you're going to play a guy who is let's say a 20 to 25 minute a night player. You have to be cautious on that. So that's kind of sets the high end. I'd go slightly lower than that. And then also with the Knicks, you're going to be saying, hey, everybody else gave up a little here. We need you to give up a little too, because we need to be able to fill out the roster in a reasonable way around you guys.
Yeah. And he's another interesting one, man, because he's so impactful for this team and very much needed as a defensive anchor, signal caller, all of that, leader, especially on the court for sure. I just, and then you could also make a case, as some fans say, hey, this is the best it's going to get for him. try to trade him now and get some depth pieces that you may not be able to get, on the vet minimum market. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I've seen people suggest, and I don't argue with them too hard, of, hey, like, if we're only going to get 45 games a year out of this guy, I'd rather get somebody who, even if the upside isn't there, is just we're going to get 70 games out of him. I'd rather have somebody like that for maybe a little bit less money, and then maybe we can get a backup wing too, or something along those lines. And sure, that's definitely true. I think you want to be a little cautious, because I think no matter who the new coach comes in, we have to own, when you play Townsend Brunson rather, you need defenders out there with
Sure.
them. And you just got to have guys who can kind of hold down the defensive end. And that's where you're going to be very careful, because again, throughout the playoffs, we saw Mitchell Robinson's defensive impact show up, all the things he can do. He's just such a special defender with the way he can switch out on the perimeter. And I mean, he's got to be the best jump shot blocking big man in the league, because they're like, I like to say, nobody bothers Kristaps Porzingis' 3-point shot. Mitchell Robinson does.
That's right.
Because he's going to get up there to challenge it, and that's the only one who does that to him. So if he's doing it to him, he can certainly do it to others. So that's where I'd be very careful with this. One thing too for the Knicks is, you don't want to mess around too much, because next summer there are going to be real teams with cap space. It's not just going to be the Nets sitting out there with cap space. You might have a couple teams that are like, you know what, we can kind of do to you guys what happened to you with Isaiah Hartenstein, where they could not pay him that, but now they've got sufficient bird rights to pay these guys whatever. But it might turn into, whoa, wait a minute, now we're $10 million over the second apron. That's a tough place to be living. Last thing I'll kind of say, because it kind of pulls it all together on this topic, is the second apron. It's tough, but if you're a title contender, you can go. It's not a nice place to visit, but you stay there for a year, and then you get out of there, right? You stay there a year and you get out of there, because it's going to make that 1 year tough to do some stuff, but you're not triggering the things like frozen draft pick,
right?
And potentially running into that pick being dropped to the end of the first round, and all the really long-term things that hit you.
Yeah,
you can go. You go, you visit for a year, you get your work done, and then you get out of there if you can. And that's what I think you're going to see a lot of these teams try to do. They don't want to get caught there like Boston did, unfortunately, and had to break up more, or like where Phoenix is. I think Phoenix has set up permanent residency there now.
And once again, we're talking to Keith Smith, breaking down the NBA 2025 free agency preview show. And salute to everybody in the chat, man, wherever you guys are watching from. Happy Friday. The PJ Tucker deal, $3.4 million for this upcoming season, 25-26, which is the team option. Do they pick up the option and use that as trade bait? What do you think?
Yeah, so that one's kind of an interesting structure, because even if they pick up the team option, the contract is still non-guaranteed. So if I'm the Knicks, I'm thinking about, all right, let's pick up the option, because if there comes a reason why we have to waive him, we just waive him, and it's the same thing. It just happens a little later down the line, same outcome for PJ Tucker. But there's also a world where if it's, man, you know what I wish we had right now? $3 million more to put into a trade. Well, then you can, because you got PJ Tucker. Even though it's non-guaranteed, they could guarantee any portion of that up to using it. As long as it stays non-guaranteed, it doesn't count as anything in a trade. It stays for whatever the guaranteed portion is. But you can always guarantee it more. We've seen that happen in several trades over the years. And that's where I think it just gives you a little bit of flexibility with that. Is there a world where PJ Tucker should be on a $3.4 million deal for a team that's kind of dancing around apron issues? Probably not. But in this specific circumstance, because you can still get out of it free and clear, it'll start counting, if you will, when the regular season starts. Well, but by then you'll obviously know, did we need it? Did we not? Are we okay to carry it further? And that's why you pick up the option, but you leave it non-guaranteed until you don't have to, I guess, is the best way to put that.
Precious Achua gave them a little bit, it did him a little bit of a favor last year. Well, it kind of worked out for both sides, right? His market looked like there wasn't really existent. He comes back for the $6 million, waives the technical no trade clause, and gives them the wiggle room to potentially trade him in by the deadline. That never happened. What do you think happens with Achua there with the $6 million?
Yeah, I'd have at least a conversation and say you open up something pretty similar to that. I'm not going to go much more than what he made last year. And if it needs to be more than that, then hey, go see what's out there for you on the market. If you can find somebody willing to give you more, or
he's
even if it's
he's a minimum player though.
Yeah, probably. But again, what you're doing if you have him at $6 million, $5 million, you're creating at least a little more tradable salary that can go out, because all respect meant to Precious Achua, nobody's jumping up and down for him as the basketball playing asset.
Right.
So that's where, hey, if we can have $5-6 million of tradable salary, what we're really putting in is maybe one of the other players is the real get, and maybe some sort of draft capital is what we're going after here. And that's where, that you could do that. But yeah, if it starts to get silly, then see you later. We'll replace you with a true minimum, veteran minimum big man with that. And maybe we give more minutes to Huck Porty or something like that in the third string big role.
When you think about vet minimums, I'm curious to see, especially with this climate and where teams are, especially the contenders, could that squeeze some of the markets for guys who may have thought they're, taxpayer mid, but maybe they're a little bit lower, where the Knicks can maybe sneak in? What do you think about that group?
Yeah, for sure. And we saw it play out last year where a guy like Gary Trent Jr. opted out of a contract, and then was kind of the music stopped and he didn't have a chair to sit in. It was like, where am I going? He took a minimum deal with the Bucks and played really, really well. And I think now, hopefully for him, he's earned more than that, but money's going to dry up very quickly. Again, the Nets are the only team that really has cap space. And I wrote a piece for Spotrac that laid out where all 30 teams are. Whether they're cap space, could have cap space, they're a non-tax MLE, tax MLE, they're at second apron. I put it all in there. Every team is covered. So you can really see where they project today. And this is factoring in like the trades we've seen and all that stuff already. So you got to get there with these guys. And what happens is the Nets aren't really looking to sign players. They're going to use their cap space more to take in bad contracts, facilitate deals. They just drafted 5 guys, which was bonkers. It sounds like they're keeping all 5, and all 5 are going to be here next year. So let's see where that goes. So take their cap space out of the mix, right? Let's just use Gary Trent Jr. again as the example. Well, it's not the Nets. If the Pistons have cap space, they're doing that because that's what they need to do to keep Malik Beasley. So take them out. And whatever minimal amount of cap space the Grizzlies could create is going to Jaren Jackson Jr. in a renegotiation and extension. So they're not going to play either. So now you're like, all right, well, as the non-taxpayer mid-level, $14 million. Those will dry up really quickly. And if it goes like it did last year, because those can now be used as trade exceptions, a lot of teams held on to them and said, we'll hold on, and then they used them at the trade deadline instead. So that's there. So now you're like, all right, what about the taxpayer mid-level, $5.7 million? That sounds good, but that means those teams are expensive, like the Knicks, for example. And then you're running into, now we hard capped ourselves at the second apron, and we're playing games again like, hey, G League guy, here's a 14-day contract, which isn't a real thing, but we're signing you for 2 weeks, and we're going to return you to the G League. Then we'll sign you for 2 more weeks later, and then we'll bring you up, much further down the line, and all the other games you have to play when you're hard capped. So that's where money's going to dry up super quickly. Now, the good thing is for the expensive teams that are dealing with apron issues like the Knicks, that means players should be available for minimum deals. And that's where then you can pick off these guys where you're going to be like, can't believe we got them on a minimum because they're available. And the nice thing for the Knicks is when players are a minimum player, every player agent I've ever talked to says there's 3 things. If it's determined we have to sign for the minimum somewhere, that's the best we're going to get. It is the team a winner? Is there minutes in an actual role to play? And what city is it? Well, team's a winner. Their city's New York. Everybody loves living in New York. And then, are there minutes in a role? Yeah, there's absolutely bench minutes in a role, because if it was still Tibbs, you might be like,
Yeah.
am I going there for 10 minutes a night?
Yeah.
Under the new coach, it's going to be more like, yeah, there's a 20-minute a night role for some of these guys. And that's where
Right.
they'll be better positioned to pick off some good veteran minimum signings, I think, when we get to that point of free agency.
Yeah. Only problem is when at the negotiating table, there won't be any coach in the seat. It'll just be Leon West, Gerson, and, I don't even know. We'll see what happens hopefully by next week or so.
And we got 2 days. Let's see. Let's see.
We'll see what happens there. But like you said, if it's a Jenkins, he's going deep in the rotation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that may appeal to prospective free agents who may take a little bit less, and if their vet number is high up there in terms of service, they could get a little close to that taxpayer. What do you think about a guy like a Luke Kennard? A lot of Knicks fans are intrigued by him. We need a flamethrower. What do you think about Luke Kennard's market?
Yeah, especially if you could get him on a minimum deal, 100%. Yeah, I look at that as that's like an upgraded version of Landry Shamet. Luke Kennard is a absolute dead-eye shooter. He might be one of the absolute best shooters in the NBA when you factor in he just doesn't take that many, because he's never been in a spot where it's, hey, bombs away. But if the Knicks were like, here's your role, come in, and when you are open, you let it fly, and if you don't, you're off to the bench. Like we're not, because he's not offering you a whole heck of a lot else.
Right.
He's okay with the ball in his hands, as guy. He can at least drive a closeout, make the next read, find another guy, keep the ball cycling, but he's not breaking down the defense. He's not a defender at all. But as a kind of designated shooter off the bench, yeah, 100%, I'd be all about that as a minimum signing.
I think a lot of Knicks fans are asking about the Detroit free agents, Schroeder, Beasley. I'd have to think Detroit is gonna pay these guys to bring them back. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, so Beasley, I think they're doing everything they can. The question for the Pistons right now that they're having asked themselves, and really it starts with Malik Beasley, and the nice thing is you can negotiate with your own free agents legally now the day after the finals. So let's be grown-ups. I don't like to scream and yell about tampering because every team does it, so I think it's stupid when people cry about it. But
it's ridiculous.
They were already talking with guys, but legally you can do it now. And what the Pistons, I would assume, probably by now know is the non-taxpayer mid-level enough for Malik Beasley? If it is, they sign him to that, because they have non-bird rights on him, which means they can only give him a very minimal bump. He made $6 million last year. They can only give him $7.2 million.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's just, yeah. So
Okay.
That's why, just a kind of lesson. It sounds awesome when you get a bargain signing for a guy until you have to pay him the next time.
Yeah.
Then it's like, crap, now we don't have significant enough rights to pay a guy until you get to having their full bird rights, then you're okay. But a 1-year bargain signing looks great, like it did for Beasley with the Pistons, until now they need to pay him. So now where you are, if you're the Pistons, is, all right, we got to pay this guy. So now is the non-taxpayer enough? Yes. Great. Now what we can do is we can use the bird rights to re-sign Schroeder or re-sign Tim Hardaway Jr., who a lot of people laugh about Tim Hardaway Jr., but he started 70 games for them last year.
Yeah, he did.
He's key player for them, whether you love him or not. Like, I think they'd like to have him back. Now, if Beasley says, nah, that's not enough because through a sign and trade, or I have a team that's willing to give me the MLE, but on a shorter deal, so then they can pay me more in a few years or whatever. And they're like, all right, we got to use cap space. Well, they can get to about very easily get to 17 million in cap space. But now you're renouncing your rights to Schroeder and to Hardaway, and now you only have the room exception off of one of them. So that's where it gets a little tough. Beasley, I think they'll get it worked out. They're going to keep him. Schroeder, there's a lot of interest in him around the league. A bunch of teams have come forward in the last couple of weeks. I think it's going to be hard. You're certainly not getting him on a minimum deal. Like that's not going to happen, because at the very least he'll go back to the Pistons for the room exception.
Cavs are in the second apron. They are one of the 2 second apron teams right now. The Jerome Merrill thing. What do you think? The Ty Jerome thing is very interesting because he was a beast in the regular season. Postseason was a nightmare for him. Where do you think Cleveland goes with those two guys, particularly Jerome? Because he's a New Yorker. Knicks fans are thinking about him as a potential option.
Yeah, that's a good beware the contract push. Like, like he's never played that well before. And he's a guy who's had a lot of injuries throughout a relatively short amount of time. I think they finally got that cleaned up, and I think he's going to be okay moving forward. But I would just be careful here. But yeah, and here's the good news with Cleveland. They're way over the second apron. Unless they get really kind of drastic, they're going to be over the second apron. But again, title contender. Go visit second apron world for a year, because you don't need a whole lot. Like, you've got a pretty good team in place. I think the Cavs and the Knicks enter the season as the Eastern Conference co-favorites right now, as everything stands. We'll see what happens a week from now when free agency gets going fully. But I think right now they're really good. And I think for both of them, when Halliburton went down, when Tatum went down, both of them are like, why not us? Like, we don't have to make a big swing and make a big move, because we're already right here. We're already there. So if I'm the Cavs, I'm thinking, all right, re-signing Ty Jerome, let's say they give him $10 million. That's going to take us further in the apron. But here's the good news. You're going to go deep into the apron. But again, you can visit second apron land for a year. Then next summer, if you don't break through and get to the finals, all right, now we got to make the move. Now we're probably breaking up the Garland-Mitchell backcourt. We're maybe moving Allen. And then you're out of the second apron. That becomes, all right, we're going to get down under the second apron and off we go. So I would be very willing to be really expensive. And I think it gets lost a little because it's been a bit. Dan Gilbert paid a whole lot of luxury tax in the LeBron years. Some of those LeBron years, they were pretty expensive. So I don't think he's going to necessarily shy away from the expense part. It'll be if his basketball operations team, Kobe Altman and staff, are like, hold on. But again, for the Knicks, I don't think you're swiping Ty Jerome for even the taxpayer mid-level. You're going to have to find a way to get him $10 million or so at least. Yeah. That's what he's earned.
I agree. What's your read on, and again, this guy's making $18 million, so I think, a one-for-one trade, especially with who the Knicks have, is difficult. But a guy like a Colin Sexton.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to cost you Josh Hart or Mitchell Robinson just to get there trade-wise, and that – I can see worlds, but I'm kind of like, all right, what's his role on a team where Brunson and Bridges start in the backcourt, or Hart, or however you want to call it. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. And then you have Miles McBride, who I love, coming off the bench, kind of playing the role Sexton kind of plays anyway as the energy scoring guard. So I like, you'd have to be making another move for me for that to make sense. I'm certainly, I don't want to sound like it's so old here, but if you did Robinson for Sexton, like, that breaks all the old NBA rule if you don't trade big for small, right? Like that, that gets scary. That feels like we're plugging one hole and we created another. And that's where it gets difficult. Yeah. And
that's the difficulty with this Knicks roster, because the core, every piece of the core is like vital for their championship hopes. Yes, they need more, but every piece of the core is vital. So trading one to bring in another, you still have a hole. And then if you're going to group them up to make a blockbuster, you got more depth holes. So yeah, I mean, they're 2 games away from the Eastern Conference Finals. To me, you bring in the coach first. That's the easiest change to make. You bring the coach in. You bring in your vet minimums, different guys that can fit the coach's system, hope for better chemistry, and see where the chips fall, next season.
I'm 100% with you, and I promise I'm not taking a dig and trying to bring up bad memories. But if that Halliburton shot bounces off the rim instead of straight up and through, Knicks might have been in the finals. Right? I don't know that they beat OKC. I don't know that anybody was beating OKC. Right. And I think the Pacers in some ways were a better matchup simply because they have a lot more ball handling than the Knicks do. But you're in the finals. And if you're in the finals, you're a title contender. In my opinion, you're in the conference finals, and you're not just, man, we kind of stumbled in here. We found our way in. And we're just happy to be here. We got our doors blown off, and we're here. But it wasn't the Knicks. They earned their way there. They're a title contender. I would be very, very careful. They have a good thing going with a group of guys who clearly love playing together, that had a great time. I know it hurt. It was painful for the way the season ended. But I watched all those games and the way everybody fell for this team and how in love with them they are. Just rewind a little bit and think about, like, man, we loved these guys when they beat Boston. Like, and they're close. Don't
They're
mess
close.
around too much.
They're close.
Like make your little moves with your minimum guys at the back end of the roster. See if you can snag a Luke Kennard who can come
Yeah.
in and fill a bench shooting role. See if you can get one more big on a minimum deal to kind of give you a little bit more depth there. Maybe one of the kids pops. Maybe Pacom Dadier is more ready.
That's the
Maybe Huck Porty's more ready. Maybe Tyler Kolek is a little bit more ready. Who knows? But I wouldn't mess around. I'm not doing anything big because they're right there. And
Yeah.
the East is, I mean, come on. Like, they were so close anyway. Like, why not? Like, yeah, I just, you got to be careful when you start messing with a good thing. You tinker too much, then it all starts to crumble and fall apart. And that's when we're talking about, hey, well, we're talking in a couple years, like, hey, what do we got to do to get back to being a playoff team?
Yeah.
Let's not mess around in that world.
Any other vet minimum names that you think of? What do you think about this team? I'm thinking about, as you said, the ball handling. They needed extra ball handling, 3-point shooting. I think they could use some athleticism, depending on what happens with Precious Achua, some more front court depth. Any other vet min guys you think may be able to be had here for the Knicks?
Yeah, I would look at, maybe like someone like Torian Prince, who played
Use
pretty
him
well.
last. Yeah.
Good shooter, good size, can play really 2 through 4. The Bucks played him in all kinds of positions. He should be available. This is more, he's like a pet guy that I love and I think could be an interesting guy. Sandro Mamukelashvili,
Okay.
who's played for the Spurs.
Yeah.
Really good offensive upside with him.
Yeah. Killed the Knicks that one day. He was a one-day Knick killer. 34
Yeah,
points.
he lit him
off
up
the bench.
right in that one game. So you could look at a guy like him. We already mentioned Luke Kennard. A guy like Dante Exum has good size, can play both guard positions. Gary Harris is another guard who might be available for the minimum. You might be able to catch a guy like D'Anthony Melton, who's a nice combo guard, who is coming off an injury but might need to rehab his value a little bit. If you're looking a little bit more pure point guard, Trey Jones, Tyus Jones,
Yeah,
they're
just thinking
probably
about
going to be available. They're probably going to get priced out other places. The wing market, it's a little weaker with like
Yeah.
the bigger wings, but like Torrey Craig, I would look around and see like, hey, if Amir Coffey is still hanging out there and hasn't gotten a deal, he's a guy I really like, and I think a little lost in a pretty deep Clippers wing group there, so he's somebody I would look at. But yeah, there's options. Then better minimum big guys. There's always a big guy or two you can get. For I like a guy like Trey Lyles. If he's available for the minimum because he gets priced out everywhere else, he'd be an awesome fit because you could kind of go into the year with him, Robinson, and Towns as like a 3 big rotation, especially if you went back to starting the 2 bigs. He'd be a nice 3rd big to slip in there because he could kind of play the 4 and the 5. He can step out and shoot a little bit. So there's definitely options out there.
How about Nance? What do you think the Hawks do with Nance Jr.?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I would have said a week ago they probably just let him go. Now that like they're kind of looks like they're gearing up to make a little push here with some of their acquisitions. I think they've had a heck of a week because they got Porzingis for not much, and in as much as you guys know it, Celtics fans know it, dude misses a lot of time. But when he's playing, like he can be special. He was a huge part of why Boston won the championship last year, even if he did miss a large chunk of the playoff run. But now that they got him, they've got a really nice roster they're building up. Maybe he just says, hey, let's run it back here. They traded George Niang in that deal, so they need another big just in there because you got to protect against Porzingis. They really only have him and a Kongwu and then a couple much younger guys maybe aren't quite ready. Mohamed Gay and Dominic Barlow. They maybe aren't ready if you're really trying to be a playoff team. So maybe he stays. But if he doesn't, yeah, that's another guy you can look at and say, hey, a 4-5 combo guy can do a lot of different things. Yeah, why not? If it's a minimum deal, 100% I'd be in on Larry Nance.
Couple more quick ones here for you, and once again, we're talking to Keith Smith. You can catch his writing and his cap breakdowns for the NBA offseason on Spotrac, also on Twitter at Keith Smith NBA, and also on YouTube, the NBA Front Office Show with our guy Trevor Lane. What do you think about the market for Kuminga? 22 years old, fell in and out of favor with the Warriors. No clue who he really is as a player. Had some ups, had some downs. What's the Kuminga market looking like right now?
Yeah, it's a little weird because normally you would say, all right, well, the Warriors are just going to re-sign him, but he's really fallen out of favor there. So you've got some kind of stuff going on with that. Challenge is, again, I'm a broken record with this, but there's no real cap space teams. I don't think the Nets are going to go play in the Kuminga market. So then it becomes, all right, let's do a sign and trade. But without boring everybody to tears here on a Friday night as they're getting ready to start their weekend, there's this thing called base year compensation, which if a player gets a big enough raise, and they're going to be moved in a sign and trade, what that does is it triggers this kind of block from that happening in a way where, like, let's say Jonathan Kuminga in a sign and trade is going to get 30 million, and I'm just because it's a nice round number in first year salary, he'll only count as 15 on the Warriors side going out and 30 on the other team side coming in. So then you got to bring in a third team. Sure, Brooklyn. I jokingly said Sean Marks should start free agency standing in front of Barclays with "Bring me, you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor, you're bad contracts. Send them with a draft pick. Let's go." Right? Like we're good. With that. So yeah, you could rope the Nets into saying, "Hey, can you help?" They already did it once. They did it in the Porzingis trade to the Hawks. So Boston didn't have to take back so much money. So certainly they're open to that. They've made that clear. There's other teams with exceptions. So it just makes it a little more difficult. But I personally like Jonathan Kuminga. It's maybe I'm just an old guy here, but like I think scoring still matters. I think we go a little too far with like, well, this guy only scores 9 points per game, but all of his advanced metrics say he's really like a 30-point per game swing guy. And it's sort of like, okay, but but who puts the ball in the hoop? Like, you still have to score 110 points a game to win now. And that's where I think with Kuminga, he still has value. It's got to be the right kind of team with that. I certainly am not, here's a max deal because I'm going to build everything around you, but 30 million, we already talked about it. It's not a max deal anymore, right? You got to reframe your thinking on what a max deal is. Max deal now starts at almost 40.
That's right.
Right? So anything below that, you're in the range of 20% of the cap, and that's not the worst thing in the world. So yeah, it's going to take the right team. If I was the Warriors, I'd just re-sign him and actually play him and figure it out. But maybe that ship seems like it might have sailed.
Yeah, seems so. Does Minnesota remain invested in that front court? They may not have a choice with Julius. Julius got that $30 million player option. Yep. He should probably take that. But Naz Reid is going to be looking for a bag as well. Where do you think the Timberwolves go here with their big front court?
Yeah, if Julius Randle opts out, it's going to be almost immediately followed like Fred VanVleet's.
Right.
That was a team option, but it'll be followed like that with here's his new contract where he actually took the number down a little bit, or he didn't go to a super huge number, and that was more, hey, I'll lock in more long-term security while giving the Wolves some flexibility. That certainly could happen. If he opts out with the idea of I'll go get a big contract somewhere else, well, that's not coming. Like again, the Nets doing it? Nope. So where are we going with that? Naz Reid, that's one where it gets a little weird. I have to also wonder with Naz Reid, we're at the point of a career for a player where it is guys start to want to, I like it here, but man, I'm a starter. Like what? I want to go somewhere I can play 30 minutes a night and be like one of the guys on a team. That's where that could get a little bit sideways. I counter that though with he is beloved in Minnesota. He's got all kinds of off-court things going on there that are great for him and his family and everything else. So there might be a world where he says, you know what, I'm just really happy here. And the Wolves, they've been kind of like, if we're expensive, like we're expensive. But in a way, they're kind of sitting where the Knicks are, where we're in the West Finals. We're in the West Finals 2 years in a row. We're not far away. If something weird happens, why not us, right? Why wouldn't we be the team to break through? So I think there's a chance they do kind of run it back with those guys. I think if one of the two of them leaves, it's Naz Reid, just simply because I think a little bit of a younger guy, a little more plug and play. But I'd be very careful too if I'm acquiring Naz Reid. Like, he's not a starting center,
right? Because
I don't think he offers you enough that you need defensively there. But I do like Naz Reid quite a bit if he's a part of your front court group, in a big part of it.
Last one for you here. Trades. The KD trade was the obvious one. We knew that from last season that this was going to happen. The honest one, the most speculative in nature. Is there a star trade out there that you're thinking about, just, again, in terms of the aprons and player movement this offseason? Is there one that you're curious about that we may not be thinking about?
Yeah, it's a good question. I still, only because it's Daryl Morey, it wouldn't surprise me if all of a sudden we hear Paul George is getting traded, even though he went there a year ago. It just it seems like something more he could do. Everything has kind of gone sideways there for them. I certainly don't expect that to happen by any means, but I would not be like, oh my gosh, we never saw this coming. I was a little surprised the Sacramento Kings kind of said, yeah, we're not trading Sabonis, like don't even call. But they're open on DeMar DeRozan. Is he a star still? I mean, I guess that's relative to how you define it. Still a really good player, but I think we're now down to more role players are getting moved, like and probably some pretty good role players. I mean, Portland's got like one of the weirdest rosters in the league with a ton of vets and some kids. They now have all these centers they traded, or they not traded up, they traded back, but then they drafted Yang Hun Sen in the draft, who they seem to love. A year after drafted Klingon. Ayton and Williams are super available there, but they acquired Holiday because they want to make a push. So I think teams are kind of what's going on there. They think DeRozan, there'll be calls on him. The Wizards, 4 veteran guys, Chris Middleton, Marcus Smart, they acquired last year, CJ McCollum and Kelly Olynyk. It's going to be more guys like that versus a blockbuster. But now that I've said that, every time I think, all right, that's done, something comes out of nowhere with this silly league. I'm sitting in Las Vegas in the after effects of an earthquake, and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are headed to the Clippers, and the whole league got turned upside down. That's one of my most favorite thing about the NBA is the basketball itself. But my next most favorite thing is this silly league never doesn't deliver on the out of nowhere drama.
Yeah. No question about it, man. And as you mentioned with Vegas, man, we will be in Las Vegas for SBC Sports Business Classroom with the great Bobby Marks, man. So I'll see you in a couple weeks, and hopefully after free agency, we'll meet at the podcast studio there and break down and react to everything that went down, man.
It'll be great, man. I'm super excited. It's going to be a blast out there, and great week of learning, and all of us getting better. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
There we go, man. Well, Keith, enjoy the weekend. Definitely appreciate the time, and we'll be tracking everything on your Twitter accounts, on Spotrac, the NBA front office show as well. Come Tuesday, man. We'll see you then.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Keith Smith. Hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed that breakdown, man. One of the best in the business when it comes to breaking this thing down, because there's so much to consider, the aprons and, trades, draft. This is why these front office guys get paid the big bucks. And, I when I talked to Keith about SBC, about Sports Business Classroom, that's one of the hands-on experience that the students get, because with Sports Business Classroom, you have people who are studying different tracks. It's a 1-week crash course. So you have salary cap guys like Keith. Yossi Goslin came from Sports Business Classroom. You have salary cap guys. You have aspiring agents. You have aspiring scouts. So all those people that are studying in those different tracks, are taking courses relevant to their track, they all come together for a mock trade deadline and start negotiating deals and things of that nature. So it's a real fun experience. Last year was the first one for me. So I'll be out there in Vegas with these guys and tapping in. And I'll be working with Howard Beck, J.A. Dante, the great Mike Fratello, teaching media and broadcasting students. And so anybody that's pulling up to Summer League, make sure that you guys come through and holler at your boy, because I'll pretty much be at the Thomas and Mack Center all day, every day. So make sure that you guys see me and hit me up. For the Knicks fans in the building and all our good people on the NBA Report, we're going to sign off from here. So salute to you guys on the NBA Report side for tapping in. We'll see you guys next week during the start of free agency. All right, so see you guys on the NBA Report side, because we're going to keep it Knicks here strictly for the rest of this show. Okay, so for the Knicks fans in the building, we're gonna be finalizing the details for the Summer League meetup. It'll most likely be on the 12th of July, which is a Saturday. So make sure you guys are keeping in contact with us, staying up with us either on the KFTV mailing list, subscribed here on YouTube, so on and so forth, because we will be making those announcements as early as next week. All right, so make sure that you guys are keeping up with us. Last year, we had a great turnout. We collaborate with our guys at Knicks Film School on the event. CK2K is always in the building, so that's the time when, we get to link up with our West Coast crew and have a good time, man, out there in the desert in hot-ass Las Vegas, man. Be hot out there, man. That's why most of the days I'm in the AC of the Thompson Mack Arena, because, it's better than being outside of the desert and sweating it out. So we will be there. Okay? Now, speaking of Las Vegas Summer League, the Knicks got a new pickup to team up with the creator, with Pacome Dadier, with Mohamed Diawara. Dink Pate is coming through to Summer League, ladies and gentlemen, man. What do we think about this kid, Dink Pate, man? What do we think about the Dink Pate pickup? This kid looks pretty good. The youngest professional basketball player in league history, because he signed up with the G League Ignite at the age of 17. Dink Pate is 19 years old. He did go through the NBA draft interview process with a lot of teams. Hasn't picked up just yet. So the New York Knicks are taking a flyer on this kid. And, hey, he looks like someone worth taking a flyer on. He looks like someone worth taking a flyer on, man. This is Juan Toscano Anderson's take on Dink Pate. Here we go.
I don't think it's a secret, so he's not going to think I'm gassing him or anything, but he's on the trajectory of being a superstar. You look at him, it's like he's so talented, he's so mature, he's smart, but then you look at him and you say, wow, he hasn't figured anything out. Imagine where he's going to go. And I sit and reflect every day. I hope that I can help him while I'm here get to where he's trying to go. Because, that would make me happy just to see him live out his dream. And I truly believe that he's a superstar in the making. So it's just fun to be, a small part of his story because I do believe that he's going to be one of those ones.
All right, so that's Dink Pate, man, coming through to the Knicks Summer League squad. What do we think here, man?
Energy to push it in transition, and here we go. With
no way, Dink Pate! What is happening? Where is he living? Out in
the most recent action.
Listen to the commentary.
Things change. I think it looks like both teams are. Look out for Dink Pate! He found his way early.
Fake out to Johnson. Goes around to Love and then threw it away. Pass ahead to Pate. Pate will beat Woodard and go to the windmill.
He likes those windmills, don't he? There we go. Oh, get in the pass lane.
Also stripped by Jones.
Let's go. Windmill it up.
Pate with the windmill in his hometown.
Okay.
He said, don't worry about it, Orlando guy.
This kid's a windmill machine.
3-second shot at the buzzer by Pate.
Oh,
Takes it in.
the buzzer beater.
At the buzzer. Looks like he got it off. What a frenetic.
I like this kid already. Let's sign him up, man. Two-way deal. Let's bring him up. The Dink Pate Hive, I'm starting it up, man, before I even get to Summer League. I might have his Summer League jersey, rocking it at the game. Now, look, man, in all honesty, like, these are the guys that the Knicks have to be taking flyers on. We got no choice at this stage in the game. Take some flyers. They look like they're building up the wing factory. And let's see if we could catch lightning in a bottle. You just never know. Some guys come through the G League ranks and through Summer League undrafted and make an impact. I'm sure he has a lot of holes that he needs to figure out in his game. But the athleticism is there. 19 years old, man. Take a flyer, man. Take a swing and see what's up. Okay. Also, I see people are putting that out there in the chat. The Knicks Summer League schedule, as it stands right now, is Friday, July 11th versus Detroit, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on NBA TV. It's every other day. Friday, Sunday against the Celtics, 5:30 on NBA TV. Sunday, 7:15, July 15th, against the Nets, 6 p.m. ESPN2. And then Tuesday, no, I'm bugging. No. Tuesday against the Nets, which is 7:15, 6 p.m. on ESPN2. And then Thursday against the Pacers, revenge against the Pacers, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN2. So that's that. And then we'll see where they end up there. They make the playoffs and additional games will be added on. All right, so it's every other day. As usual, you can keep it locked here for highlights, analysis, and all the overreactions that you're looking for. Number one show for the fans, by the fans. We got you covered. Dimitri, young athletic wings. That is what we're looking for here. Absolutely. So there we go, man. All right, so look, Summer League team just got very interesting. You got James Najee, the center. You have Kolick, the second-year guys. Dadier's mans. Diawara's coming through. McCullers, a healthy McCullers. Knicks Summer League team could be the favorite. I hope I get there in time to catch a little Cooper Flag or see what's up. Because, a lot of the star players, like the Flags and stuff, he might play 1, maybe 2. And hopefully he stays healthy throughout. If you get 3, you'd be lucky. I think Wemby played... Wemby played about 2 games, I think. Played about 2 games. So, let's see what happens there. But, hey, I can't hate it. Can't knock it. Anyway, man. Great show to the family. Definitely great show. Free agency, couple of days. Weekend is here. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Okay, catch up on content. We had a great week of content here on Knicks Fan TV, right here on the number one show for the fans, by the fans. So make sure that you guys are catching up on everything because we had a great week, man. We had a big week. So hopefully if you guys are the replay gang, catch up on the whole week's worth of content. Let me pull up what we did here. I gotta remind myself what we did here. Hang on. Let me pull up the channel. So give you guys a little bit of a tour here. Let me see what we have here on the live page. How much did we do here? Oh yeah, we did ton of stuff here on the page. Okay, let me pull it up here. So to everybody in the chat, hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to the channel. You have here the Bobito show. Highly recommended. Bobito Garcia, NYC Playground legend, made his Knicks Fan TV debut here this week, and we had a fantastic, phenomenal show that the people were very happy about. Knicks head coaching update. I went live talking about the James Borrego interview. The draft watch party. If you guys want to go back, we had Chris LeBron breaking down the draft picks. Micah Nori. The Knicks interview, Micah Nori, the assistant coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, had a great conversation with John Krasinski. Always do. Talking about the Nori, what he would bring to the Knicks if he's hired. John's thoughts on Tibbs being fired because he knows Tibbs as well. We talked about Stephen A. blabbering. I gave you my that was a week and a half ago. My free agent target. So anyway, we got a ton of stuff here on the channel, man. Make sure you just click on the channel homepage, click on live, because remember, YouTube categorizes our shows. The live shows are all in one category, and then the videos, we clip up some of the key moments or the key segments from each live and put it up as separate videos so that you guys are able to tap in that way as well. All right, so make sure you tap into the content over the course of this weekend. We appreciate everybody for tapping in. I'm watching. Salute. Jose M., how did I miss the show? You got to turn on your notifications, man. Turn on your notifications. All right? Or make sure you guys are following us. Make sure you guys are signing up for the newsletter and all that good stuff. Will Adams, salute. Son from Brooklyn, I see you in here. Salute to you. Life of a Leo, appreciate you, man. Dimitri, appreciate you. Jason Woke, my guy's in here. He says, dink it up. Jason, if you're headed to Vegas, man, make sure you call me, man. Keep me posted. Stephen Gomez, salute to Stephen Gomez, holding it down for the South Beach, Miami, Dade, Fort Lauderdale Knicks fans. holding it down. FLS salute. Says Dink Pate could be a steal. Could be. Eric L. Beats. Salute to you. TM, salute to you. Salute. Okay. All right, man. I'm gonna get out of here, man. Hit the gym, man. Get my weights on, and enjoy the weekend. Everybody enjoy it. Hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to the channel. Great show. We out of here.